Hello and welcome to another ARCHLine Webinar Wednesday. My name is Zoltán Tóth. Today's topic is quite exciting one. We are going to talk about slabs and columns and beams. There's a lot to cover, so let's take a look. As always, I'm joined by my colleague, Mr. Illés Pap, who's our resident architect over here.
Hi there.
So like I said, today is going to be a show about structural elements, how they bind to each other, what the connections are, and how you can create additional customized elements. Because when it comes to building elements, you can work with the presets that you have in any kind of software, or you can go beyond that, create customized complex structures. I'm talking of multi-layered slabs and customized beams, but maybe you can tell us more about what we are going to cover today.
Today actually we will first cover how these building elements connect to each other in the building itself, talking about how they can be locked to specific parts of the building. And then we will just first start by creating, slabs and how you can draft them and what sort of methods you can use when you would like to extend them with external information, adding layers, perhaps beams, and even cutouts and all sorts of things like that. And then we will go deeper into the smaller structure, like first when we cover the beams of the slab, then we move on and we will discuss the beam as an individual part of the software. Then we will talk about in the same way we will talk about the columns. There's a lot of common things when we talk about the beams and the columns, but as you will see, they have quite a lot of differences that are worth talking about.
That's right. Now, as always, I urge you to ask your questions. You can do that on the right-hand side of this chat bar. Even you have to test if it works for you, but I just said hi, so maybe you can do that to us in order to check if it's working. So all questions could come here. We try to cover them as we go along, or not at the end. We are going to devote a couple of minutes to them to talk about them. Now, when we talk about ARCHLine being a BIM architectural and interior design software, there's a very interesting aspect regarding how the elements bind to each other. And I think that's what we should talk about first, right?
Yeah, well, talking about the building structure, how they connect and collaborate, work as one building unit, how they build up a building. We already talked about the walls and the openings, but these mostly horizontal items like the slabs are a very important part of the building, and the reason they are working like this, as we can see the connection, is quite specific. First things first, let's see what we have here. This is kind of a cutout of a larger building to show the structure, and when you see we have a column, we have a slab. And this specific project doesn't contain any beam, but it should work the same way as I described these here. Now, let me quickly turn off the shadows here, because I think it will make it even more easy to understand. So this is how this structure connects to each other. And when I go and say that, okay, I'm about to change the ground floor settings and so on, for example, going to the ground floor option and changing the this should be the basement, because that's the level that I'm about to change. So on the basement level, we now have a certain difference between the floor to floor height. That's actually the floor height in ARCHLine. So if I'm about to change that, for example, to elevate it and say, I don't know, this should be larger by 45 centimeters, and I say okay, update that, and the software shows this difference. And actually, as you can see, some building parts follow the changes. Actually, the beam was updated, and the other part, the wall, wasn't.
What does it depend on, whether if it changes or not?
The reason to that, this is a good description of how the default ARCHLine structure works. So this is how the default ARCHLine structure works. This is how the structure would work if they wouldn't have a setting that allows you to connect these things by default automatically to separate parts of the building itself. So say what defines the height of this item here? First things first, we can see the height and the base elevation value here. But the most important thing here is that if I go and click on edit, then I have this height parameters option here, and this tells me that the bottom ground, the bottom bound should be, in this case, it's bottom of surface, which is actually usually set to top of surface. I made it in a way that we can see that this is how the software represents the changes. So now if I click OK, it changes the height automatically. I didn't even type a distance or a different height.
You don't need to, because
it recognizes these values. These values are actually stored always in the specific level setting. So if you go to the level management and you say that I'm about to change the basement, finished floor, top of structure, bottom of structure, these can all be changed. That's the reason why this this column penetrates the slab 10 centimeters exactly. It's because it is set like that here. If I change it to, I don't know, 0, saying that it should really be the same as the finished floor in this specific case, then it updates further. So this is how you can manage these things. The good thing about this is that you have two options. You always have two options to deal with a sort of situation like this. You can manage these settings globally on the level scale. You can tell that everything is bound, because this is how the software is set automatically. Everything is automatically bound to specific areas, or specific planes of the level. So all you need to do is just to do the same as you did before. You just keep drawing things, and they automatically keep updating if you change any of those values. But you can still go with manually typing the value. So if you just click here and say, okay, I don't want to bound it to that specific level, I just would like to have something that is 3 meters tall, you just do that. You just type it, and you will see
in this
a value.
Case, it unlinks and then the value that you have submitted. What about that gap in the slab just above it? So is that something that's going to be filled automatically?
When you update the 3D, yes. This is something that automatically generates the connections. There is a priority between items, and the moment a column is penetrating the slab, it will automatically design and create its own hole in the slab, so you don't even have to do it manually.
Oh yes.
So this is how it goes. And another thing that you just mentioned, is if you just change the value here manually to, I don't know, a specific value, see, the software is smart enough not unlinking it automatically. It just changes the offset. So because by default, there is an offset. Usually the offset is 0, because you would like to specifically link it to that specific plane. But if you change the value, the software is smart enough to recognize that, okay, perhaps you still would like to keep the connection, just with a different height. If you would like to unlink the connection, you have to definitely say you don't want to set a bound and then say, okay, and then you disconnect this connection. The way the software represents that is actually, let me just...
I think we were in another scale, so maybe it wasn't limited.
The way it represents this, that this instead of gray, it becomes white. So that's how I just do it again. So I just say unset, and then now I should change it to 3 meters, just as I did it before. So now I know this is unlinked because it's not gray.
Yes. So if you would crank up the height of this level, then this is going to stay at 3 meters.
Yeah. Now it wouldn't change.
The question: what kind of elements can be bound to these levels? I know that slabs can be, and columns.
Slabs, walls, columns. Most of this the structure can be bound like this, because this keeps the workflow easy, and you don't have to manually specify changes one by one, or copy properties, or any other way. You can just solve this on the the global scale of this building. Yes. Now, when we talk about levels, we should also mention how you can maintain multi-level, multi-story structure.
For example, a column going through several levels.
And most of the time, the best if you just divide it floor by floor. I will show you another example later when we work on a different project. All you need to do is just you just make copies of that building part, for example, the column or the wall or something like that, and you just design that specific part that falls to the level. And the reason to that is that the basic rule in ARCHLine is that when you design something, when you draw something, it lives on that floor. Its 2D symbol is on that specific floor. There are settings where you can manage on which floor these things are visible, but by default, on my experience and when I teach students, this is easier to maintain. Usually, just simply draw I don't know, 3 meter tall wall, 3 meter tall column, and so on, and just divide them manually.
Having talked about the basic principles of binding to levels, I think now we could talk about slabs, how to create them. Or before that, you wanted to show how to make a structure going through different levels.
I think this time it's okay, and we will cover this topic. We will just get back to this topic later when we have the other building part.
So let's talk about slabs now. Now, you already know that ARCHLine comes with a slab tool, which allows you to sketch a slab with presets. But now we are going to go a bit beyond that. First, we will talk about the basics, so how you can actually create the slab, and then we talk about how to create multi-layered ones, sloped ones, or customizably profiled ones. But let's look at the basics. So we have a structure here. We want to have a slab under it. So how do we do that?
Yeah, when we talk about creating slabs, the most important thing is that when you work with the slab tool, and this is the same with all of the architectural items, that you have a specific preset that you work with. So to be able to determine what you will create, the only thing that you need to do is just to go to building, properties, and slab. Or you can just right-click on the command and check the properties using the property tool. And here you can find the layer settings, all the generic settings, the material, even the cutting rules. We will talk about these later. You can find where it is at, and here again you have the same setting. You can actually link it or unlink it if you prefer that way. By default, again, the slabs are also linked to the specific level of the floor itself, and then you can also set up layers and beams, but we will talk about those later. So this is how you can set up a property, or check at least the properties of this slab. So when I know what I will create, then I have actually at least two options when I'm about to create a slab under this whole building. One is the so-called slab in sketch mode. This is very simple. You just start and you just literally start drafting and say, I don't know, I just connect these dots. This is not the final result that I'm about to see. Just I'm really following the contour. See, this way you can design a specific shape, but most of the time when you are about to design a slab under a building that you already created by walls, there is an even faster way. So I just undone this tab, and that's the slab by walls. So if you click on that and you click here and just draw a rectangle, and then click on the other corner and select the whole building, and you say, okay, let's just do that, then the software actually designs a slab following the external contours of your building. So it's automatically recognizing the shape, the external contour, and then it's automatically generating this slab under this whole structure.
How do you modify the outlay?
Well, as you can see, we have corner points which you can just click on and erase or move this node somewhere else to create, I don't know, a balcony or something like that. Talking about a balcony, I think I will just create some here. If you click on an edge, you have the option to offset it. This way you can actually just extend it further under this whole structure. Let's say I'm about to delete this and offset it, and again erase it. So this way, during sketching, actually I'm literally sketching the whole contour of this simple slab, which I will detail later, and the way I'm doing it is very flexible. I can click on the contour and do whatever I wish. I can even make curves or remove nodes or insert nodes. For example, here I would like to change the distance between here and here. So I'm about to insert a node here and just design an offset. I don't know, let's just manually move it. I can even type a value. So this way I can move it to a different location.
How about holes and other incisions into this slab? So how do you create recesses?
Well, when we have a hole, there is, again, at least two methods to create a hole in a slab. One way is that when you select it, you have the option in the local menu to add a hole, and that's it here. you can create a hole by manually drawing it. So let's say this is actually the first floor. This is not the ground floor, as you can see it here. So let's say I'm about to design, for example, a gallery here, which is like an open air, large room space, and then I can see that here. And if I rebuild the whole building, then I can see that this is how it looks like. So that's the slab I just designed, and this is the cutout that I have created. So if I undo that, you can see how it was before, and this is how it is after the modifications. This is what happens when you manually draft it. And there are other solutions when, for example, when we are having a slab and it's above a stair, which in this case this is the ground floor, and you would like to just cut out the slab over on the top of the staircase, you can just click on the staircase and use the local menu and say, I'm about to cut the slab above the stair, and then that's the software. It's just automatically doing it.
But you are able to later customize the hole that the automatic cut creates.
Yes, of course. Now I just jumped to the first floor because that's where the contour lives, and there I can see the cutout contour. If I hide this slab, I actually erased it, so I just undo that. I can see the contour. See, this is the contour. So if I click there and I say, okay. This is the slab contour. This is working just as the same as a regular slab contour. You can just click here and use an offset, make it rectangular, even remove the node from here or move it to another place. So it works and lives the same way. The reason I use this cut above the stair option in case of the staircase, because in that case the software is actually just checking the heights step by step. So it's measuring a so-called free height, or height above the step, which is by default set. You can change that in the software settings, but it's by default set to 2.1 meters. So the software is checking this height if it's still okay, and the moment it's not, it's just start cutting out the hole, and then it makes a useful cutout above the stair.
Now let's start customizing this slab. Let's talk about the profiling tools, when you can create a section profile to this slab and make it a bit more customized.
Well, there are many reasons you could use this option, but I found this. There was a question a few weeks back, and someone asked us how to create a specific cellar ceiling, which
like
is
arches,
like an underground ceiling, and I think that's a good way of showing how that works. So let me just place it around here. I will design a slab like that here. So if you have a slab, let's just draw it in a sketch mode, and I say that this is, I don't know, 5 meters and 6 meters, and I just lock the direction and design something like this.
So you start with an ordinary slab, and what comes next?
Yeah, the whole idea behind what I'm about to create is the same way as you draw a profile, a cross-section profile or frontal profile for a wall, for example. The same way you can cut the side view of how this slab looks like. So how that works, I actually just demonstrate it first, and then I create the ceiling. So I click here, and I'm saying with a local menu, there is the reshape function, and I have actually two options: the whole profile and the bottom profile. Now the difference between the two I will show now. If I just click on the add whole profile, I can set the layout, and then I need to design a closed contour. Let's say this is an arc here, and I just actually make a weird cut here, and then say for any sort of reason I just would like to change the top as well, and then this is how it looks like. So the software actually made a cut on the full cross section, on the top, on the sides, and at the bottom, all around, and swept it through the slab itself. It's
similar to a 3D sweep tool, except that now this is still an intelligent slab, so you can still have. This
is still a slab, so you still have the beam parameters, you still have the parameters, you can change the materials and so on. So it still works the same as before. Now, if I do the other option in the from the other way around, this is what I get. It's the reshape, and I'd add bottom profile. It looks the same. I have the same layout, and I actually just simply, you know, click here and again say arc. There's an arc here, and and I'm done. I don't have to create. I actually cannot create the top now because it's only the bottom profile. So if you know that what you look for is only the bottom, then this is what you will go with. And this is how it looks like. So now you can imagine how I will solve this. Let me just undo these changes. And all I need to do is just to make it thick enough to hold the vault of this ceiling. So I just change it, I don't know, let's just change it to -1 meter. This can be positive or negative. Anyhow,
to be thick enough
you need to create the proper thickness. So what I do now, I just click on reshape, add whole profile or the bottom profile. The difference is just as we described. And I say there's an arc. And I can even set the radius, the diameter. Now I'm just doing it manually. And this is how it looks like. And if I do it the other way around, I can actually have this cross vault.
Perfect. When it comes to slanted slabs, is this how you would do that?
I could, but there is a much better way. There's actually a dedicated tool for that. So let's just go back here, and I will create 2 ramps. So talking about ramps, we actually have a dedicated tool for the ramp, which is here. But if you, for any reason, would like to use the slab itself to create a slanted ramp or a slanted kind of terrain imitation, we do have a terrain tool. But if you do not want to model a terrain, then you can just, you know, go with slopes. In that case, most of the time I also sketch a slab, and there's the slope slab option, and we have actually 2 options. One is the by reference point and by reference line. The difference between the two looks like that. If I start with the by reference point, and then I go back to the ground floor, let's just design it here. I have this plate here, and let's say I'm about to reach a level 1 meter above this level. So in that case, I know the heights, so I just go and find slope slab by reference points. You actually have to set up 3 separate reference points and the contour. The first, you need to design the contour. Let's say it's like that. It should be, I don't know, 5 meter long. And then I'm just going here and just create a closed loop, and then the software asks, okay, now you will need to give the heights, and you can decide whether these are the top or the bottom of these slabs. I will go with no, because the heights that I know of, they are the top of the of this slab. So I go with no. I know that this is at 0, so this is where we should start from. This is 0. This is also 0. And this, where I would like to reach to, is at 1 meter. And I'm working in meters, so that's why the reason I'm typing 1 here. Okay, so this is what I get then. So if I would have a plate here at 1 meter, then I already reached that level.
So you have to define at least 3 height points, and based on that, the software is going to tell you.
So this is when you know from where to where you would like to reach to. And the other one is that if you know the inclination, then you should go with the by reference line. There's a difference here. You still need to define the shape from the top view. And then the difference is that you need to set up one and another point we call this a reference line. And this reference line is where you can set up an inclination. From this point, it will either go up by a positive 10 degrees or down by a negative 10 or any sort of other degrees. And I'm just typing minus, I don't know, 12. And I'm saying, okay, so that's it. And then the software, of course, calculates everything and reaches to the specific level, which I can now measure and then, you know, attach another item to that.
Now, what about protrusions or extrusions when you have certain superstructures on the slab? How do you add them? Do you draw another slab on it and just...
This could be an option. Sometimes I also would go with that option that you just mentioned to add another specific slab item if I would like to handle and move it around as an individual part. But if I would like to handle it as part, as a kind of built-in part of this slab, for example, in this case here, I will just create a small cutout here and a small kind of concrete bench here. I would go with this option that I'm about to show now. I select the slab, and selecting the slab, I can reach the context menu, and here I can find something called the recess and attachment. Now I have two options. Either I can create a recess, so kind of partial sunk part of this item. I will go with that first. First, I need to design the top view of how it looks like. Let me just lock the direction, click here, and say, okay, I'm done with that. Now I have a default depth, which I can change. I will show you that in a moment. But first I design the other part as well, and that goes the same way. Actually, you can even find these here. You can select like that and say create attachment, and then you need to select the contour, and then you can start designing. Let's say it's about this. Let me just go and visually draw it, design it. So now I have a recess and an attachment. The way I'm about to change them is again here, and it's called the edit recess attachment. And now there's a recess, there's the attachment. The recess has the depth, which I'm about to change, I don't know, like 10 centimeters or something like that. I'm about to change the surface material. Now in this case, the surface material is actually the side material, how the side looks like. And I would like to make it nice white, so I just go with this one. And the bottom should be something like pebbles or something like that. And I go with that
That's
one.
actually the surface.
Yeah. So I'm working on this now. I cannot see the result now. If I click OK, it automatically appears because it's selected, but if I click on the attachment, we can see the change. And in case of the attachment, I'm about to change it to, I don't know, 0.3 meter. And again, the side should be something of a bright white, and the top, in this case, should be, I don't know, this kind of concrete material. And when I change here, we can see how it looks like. They're very close in colors, but actually, this is how you can set and change the settings. The way you are about to change their shape themselves is, again, it's here. You can just click on them, and then you can, add another node here, another node here, and then, just click here and make an offset. And this is the way you can design them.
Once it's created, you can resize them, reshape them. What about slicing slabs to several pieces? For instance, you created this already, but you want to treat the terrace as a separate entity. How would you do that?
Yeah, well, most of the time, when I'm starting detailing, I do this. I design first a kind of sketch, and then when I'm about to detail that, I just go to the proper level, select that, and say there is this option. It's called the edit and split. And the way it works, you actually need to set up the first point and then the second point. And actually, you can create a kind of polyline cut following the external contours of this building. And then when you say, OK, enter, then now the software breaks this into one and another item. And now I can start detailing this slab and adding layers and beams and other things like that.
Perfect. And that was actually the beginning of the work with slabs. Let's talk about complicated structures, by which I usually mean multi-layered, maybe beams in slabs.
Well, talking about complex layer structure, the first thing that we need to find is where to change the layer settings. It's always in the settings of this specific item. Actually, the software is coming with multi-layered slab styles that you can just select this item, and you can just move on and change to any of those. I will just, I don't know, select this first here. So you can see that the software is shipped with multi-level, multi-layered,
just like walls,
complex items. So you can go with those. You can even create your own. And if you would like to select this and further detail it, the way it goes, you go to the properties, and then you go to the slab layers. Now in this dialog, you usually have as many layers as this slab by default had, and then you can just clone this existing layer. So you can say that, okay, now I'm about to clone this existing one, so I have double the size, I have double the thickness, and then I can just change it. This should be around, I don't know, 20 centimeters, and the top layer should be, let's just make it 8 centimeters. That's too much. 0.08. And then let's add one another, and this should be, I don't know, 2 centimeters. This will be like for the tiling and so on. This is a slab, reinforced concrete slab, the concrete layer, and so on. Now, what you see here, that all these 3 layers, they have the same material. And the reason to that is that I have cloned these, and I didn't change them. If I would like to change this to something like regular concrete, I'm just, just select this here. Okay, I'm about to change this for tiling. Let's just go with, for example, this here. And this is just a cross-section material. This is how it will be represented if you make a cross-section and you render it. And this is the way actually you can define how it will look like when you do the regular architectural section. Materials define how the architectural section hatch looks like.
Oh, so you don't have to set up the hatches one by one. You just have to set up the appropriate material, and that would govern how the two-dimensional.
Yes. If you would like to see how that works, you need to just select the concrete material. And go and, this is selected here, you need to go to the edit material options, and then you will have the setting, the hatch on section. And this is what defines how this material looks like when it's intersected with the section line and represented as a drawing. This is how it looks like. So, and there is another way which represents how it looks like in the elevation if it's a surface material. So these are the 2 settings for drawings. Now, I'm just closing this, and you can also give a name to specify
so that
something for the Excel list, for example. And this is how you can further determine it. And if this, for example, this is for example an air cavity or something like that, you can even disable the visibility and make it not appearing in the 3D space like a regular slab layer. And also there is something called the this is the displayed layer. I will cover that just in a second. So let's just say, okay, I'm done with this. And if I would like to save this as a new style, I can just click here and say, this is the webinar.
As with everything else, you can work with styles for example. As well. You can save them. You can use other styles created by other colleagues of yours. Yeah.
So now I have this. And then I can say okay, and then I can just export that and start drawing with this in the project as well if I save that.
Now there are 2 things what I'd like to talk about here. One is having beams shown in the slab, and another thing is that the cuts, how walls are cutting the slabs or the other way around. So you promised that there's a couple of things you want to cover regarding the cuts.
Well, talking about the slabs first, there's one interesting thing here. See, now the complete structure somehow jumped with the complete thickness of this height. And why is that? Talking about the slab layers, now when I defined the thickness, I defined a positive value. And then I can see that the base offset, that's where the slab is at 0. So if I use a positive value, it goes up above this layer. I just need to change the sign of any of these, and then it will go downwards from that space, and this is how it looks like then. So this is how you can change it. And an answer to your question, how the specific items solve their connection with the slab, is actually happening here. When I go and select this slab here, I can see the contour is a full contour. It did not break around this column. But if I just hide or erase this for a moment, I can see that it's actually extracted automatically from the slab. We will talk about extraction a little bit later, because there's a specific function for the columns and the beams in case of handling them inside walls. But this is also something that automatically happens. And besides this, there is another setting, there is another option that you can check and set when you need that, and it's in the settings of the slab, and it's called the cut the walls and cut by roofs. So cut the walls defines if the slab is above a wall which is tall enough to grow larger than this slab, then by default the wall is stronger than the slab. So the wall makes its own space, or the layer makes its own space and removes that from the slab, and this makes it very easy to create, like, you know, a very thick, multi-layered slab, and then just create a partition wall, and which is automatically sitting on the proper layer, and you don't need to do anything with that because it solves itself. That's how it works. But if you would like to go the other way around, and you would like to make the slab stronger and the slab stopping the walls doing anything, then this is what you need to change. You need to change the cut by wall settings, and this will, in this case, this specific slab will cut the walls. And there's another option to use the cut by roofs. And if you imagine there is an attic, for example, there's a roof and there's a small attic slab above that. If you just draw a larger slab and then there's a roof sitting on it, it will automatically cut the proper parts off this slab if you set this option to all floors instead of no cutting. So there are these two options, and there is actually a third one, which is the extract slab from terrains, which is useful when you use the slabs as, you know, pedestrian walkways or other things, and you just would like to, you know, excavate that part of the terrain automatically. Then this is what you set here.
What about visible beam structure? Now, obviously we have a beam tool, so you could be drawing the beams one by one and then put a slab up on top of it. But there's an option in the slab tool itself, which is able to host beams in the slab structure. Now let's see how that works.
Yeah, if I'm about to set up the beams, and actually it's called the beams and block flooring system. There are two options that you can set up: the beams and the blocks inside. Now I will just cover the beams here. If I click on create, then the software will use this default cross section that I can see here, and I will actually just change this to something
it could be
like a regular rectangle. I'm just going to find the profiles, and I think it's somewhere in general, but the good thing with this, you just need to go to the home, and, you know, just you type the rectangle and it will find.
Let's say this is a wooden structure, maybe.
Yeah, let's go with that option. So this is a rectangle. By default it has a certain size, and if I change it to, I don't know, I would like to change make a 10 by 20 wooden beam, so I just change it to, I don't know, 10. And by default these options, they are locked together using this option. So if I just would like to disable that, I just unlock it and then say this is the way I would like to see that. Okay, and then I have this option. There are offsets here, which determines how this this whole beam structure is positioned, and with what sort of distance between the beams, I mean the beam axis, how it should be designed. And there is this C level, which is actually measured from the bottom of the slab, right? Of the slab layer, and it's very important. It's measured from the first, the second, or the third layer, and here's the guide here, which determines that, okay, the first layer is the thickest one, and so on and so on. So this is how you can easily set it up. So let's say, okay, I'm done with that.
But you could also set up the material as well, but it's not a problem now.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we have a visible structure, but it's sort of, the gaps are filled. So how do we make that disappear? Yeah,
well, there are two options. First things first, if you would like to create this is what I have started creating. It's not a wooden floor. It's a concrete floor. So going and working with this sort of cross section, it's fine. But if I would like to make a supportive beam structure, I have two options. I can select it and then go to the slab layers and say, I just don't want to see this. And this kind of solves the situation. There is also another way, which is, I think, it's much better, and it describes how this whole inheritance works inside the structure of this whole thing. If I'm actually erasing that layer, so instead of disabling it, I just select it and erase it, and then what happens? Should the beams disappear because I have erased those layers, or they just move to somewhere else? And actually the latest will happen. They automatically jump to the following layer. So the software won't destroy what you have created. It just tries to find a better position. Now it's not good now, so I just further edit it and say, okay, let's erase this as well. And then when I'm changing the beams and block flooring system settings here, there's this value C. Remember, I have used a cross section 10 by 20. So if I use this offset like C and it's minus the same as the height of this beam, I will create something. We have the column fall down.
Yes.
So
just
yeah.
one.
So this is what I use now, and instead of a positive value, I just use a negative value. So that's the same value as the height of this column. I mean beam. Okay, let's just go OK, and OK, and then now it's a supportive system.
So that's the recommended workflow, right?
Well, there are many ways. This is one of the recommended ways of solving this situation, because now I'm about to use it in a built-in manner. And talking about the beams, there are two other options that I should quickly cover. One is the span direction, and then if you select this here and say, okay, I'm about to change the beams and slabs. I cannot see what determines their direction, and it's actually something that you can find here in the local menu of this slab. Now we can actually see the beams, and there is this there's a whole bunch of things about editing the layers, the holes,
or you
and
could move the beams around, for instance.
you can even modify the beams in slab, and there's the span direction option. This is how you can determine a different direction. I'm just actually locking the direction and defining something else.
So that's how you can turn them.
And if you would like to move this structure here, you just need to click on one of the beams and say, let me just undo this, and say I'm about to, edit it or move it or delete all of these, or insert one beam, which is useful when you would like to insert something like this here, and so on. So this is how you can work even with the framing.
Very convenient. Now let's stay at the topic of beams, right?
Yep.
Because now these are not, these are belonging to the slabs. But what happens if you want to create customized beam structures? How would you go about them? Let's talk about the beams in general. How do they behave?
Okay, first things first, the beams are items that you can find in a building and beam commands. You can, again, right-click here and find the properties, or you can go with the building properties and you can find a beam here. But either way, you can check what you will create, and you can change their cross-section profile and all of the settings. Talking about the settings in general, all the beams, they have a cross-section which you can select from a larger library. The software is shipped with a library of cross-sections, and you can even create your own cross-section. All you need to do is just to draw the cross-section or import a DWG file, for example, and recognize the shape and save it as a closed profile. There's a command for that. I will show you that in a second. And then you can just select it. You can go to the libraries, and you can even find industrial profiles, like, for example, CHEA and so on profiles. You can just go there and select them. Again, in case of the beams, the software is shipped with styles. In case of the beams, there is only one style, but in case of the columns, you will see many more. And you can even, again, further enrich the content here. You can add your own styles, and you can even share your styles. You can change the visual style, the color, the layers, and so on. You can change the material.
Like in a two-dimensional section versus a three-dimensional one.
Yeah, I think now I will go with the beach material, but again, you can just go to the libraries and find something. This is the base offset from the floor, and again, it's measured the same way as the slab itself was measured. There's a 0 level of the floor, and from there the software measures the distance of this. And this is important, the reference point of it. So if I use 0 and I keep the reference point here, the center of this beam will be positioned to that place. If I use any of those top
that's where the reference
items,
point is
then that's where the reference point is moved. I can set up an inclination, and I can even set up other settings like the arch beam and cutout recess, but we will talk about those later. But this is how you can set up how the beam looks like. And when you say OK, and you start drawing the beam, it's very simple. You can either do it in the 3D or you can do it in the 2D. You can just click on the beam option. You can click on any of those corner points that you already have in the 2D, and then you just type the length. This should be, I don't know, around 2.5 meters or something like that, and then you can just make changes, change the length, changing inclination, and even rotate it later.
You can move and multiply them.
Yeah. Before I do that, let me just solve this issue here. I have it's a bit off.
Up.
You have two options. You can either use the move option and move it, or you can just go to the settings and change the reference point. That both works the same way. So it just, you have the same option. Now, if I'm about to multiply it, let's say I'm about to see 13 more of this. I just select it and I go to edit. Actually, I duplicate it. Well, no, let's just use the array. And this gives me the option to select this item and say 13 more I would like to see with
so that's 14 total, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. Just
with this specific corner point, I would like to take it, grab it. I'm actually not holding the mouse button, and just position it over here. And now I have all total 14 copies of this this beam here.
This looks like a nice shader, but what about if we could change the ending of the beams? How would you do that?
This is something that you can even find in the settings. Let's just go closer and we can see how it looks like. By default, they are very simple. They have a vertical cut and that's all. And then if I go here and I change the properties of this, I can find something called the ending part. This is the bottom and top ending, which in this case is very strange because they don't have a bottom and top ending. They're on the same level, but if this would be inclined, this would make sense. In this case is just one and the other ending. If I'm about to change any of these, let's say I don't know which is the bottom, which is the start. Let's just change that and say I'm about to change it to, well, vertical and perpendicular. In this case is totally the same. So let's use a user profile. Let's go and find endings.
Do you have to have an open chain for that, or
yeah,
a closed profile?
For this you will have to have an open chain. But actually, if you just look for profiles, you will find quite a few ending profiles. Now the software actually listed a lot, but you can find some of these. These are actually for endings, for rafter endings and beam endings. So you can just select these. And as you can see, just as you mentioned, this is an open profile. It's not a closed loop. It's just a bunch of lines defining a specific shape. And this is the width and this is the height. Now, I think this was 20 centimeters tall, so I just changed it to the same. Or well, I don't remember if I changed that, but I can change it here. And okay, and then say okay and okay. And then I have this cut here.
If we zoom in, we can see that you have just changed the ending profile.
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah. And this is something that you can do on all of these. And actually, if you already created it at one of these items, you can just select it and say, okay, copy these properties to all the rest of these, and now I have the same ending
that
everywhere.
Are inherited. Perfect. Now let's look at more advanced beam editing commands, because there's quite a few left. So maybe you want to load up the other project in which you can.
Well, I would like to demonstrate it here, and then we have a sample project which I would like to load at the end of the session, which demonstrates most of this connection.
One question that comes up every now and then: what happens if you have holes through them? Because maybe you want to have some kind of gutters going through, or any other elements. So what happens if you have one hole, but you also want to have the same hole in the other beams as well? So how would you do that?
Well, in this case, again, you need to go to the properties of the beam, and you should find the option which is called the cutout recess attachment. And if you click on this button, this is actually a button, then you can insert new parts, new cutout, new recess, new attachment. And then when you do that, you can decide what sort of thing is that. Now, if this is a cutout or a recess or an attachment, it behaves a bit different. Now, let's just see what we have here. We have a cutout on the front plane, which is a circle profile. And this is what we can see here. We can see it as a kind of half circle because we are at the end of this beam.
Sense.
And if I just go here and change the circle, for example, change the reference point of this, then it moves. It shifts by default its own half circle size, the radius. You can change how the surface should be represented when it's not selected. And you can even set up the distance from, in this case, from the left side.
Which
and
is
this should be
this end, right?
Yeah, which is this
If
end.
you want to move it like 30 centimeters inwards.
In that case, you just type that and you click on redraw. You can even change the size of the circle, making it smaller a little bit. For example, that's for a steel rod or something like that. And then you just change it to this and this value. I should have linked these together. And then I have, well, I did not change that perhaps. So it's, uniform, and this should change to 05. Yeah, now it's working. So this is a smaller
more
circle.
believable.
Yeah. Sorry, just one another thing. The reason that the way you can understand how these movements are left, right, up, down is these axes here. The software. This is how the software tries to help you. This is the X and Y axis, and right, left, up, down. This is how you can orient it yourself.
What about attachments? I saw something about adding attachments to it.
Well, you can use an attachment. You can. I will just change it now. You can.
I see. So
add
it's
an
now
extra.
just added on.
But I could add an extra, just the same way, or I can actually. I will add a recess because I think this is something that I should position over here, and this should be this instead of a circle with the same settings. This should be. A rectangle. Let's just go to the properties and find a rectangle. And this rectangle should be 0.1 by 0.1. And then see, now it's cutting the whole thing from the top, but what I'm about to do is just to do it from the bottom. So I can again move it up, down, and I can even change the plane itself. Now this is the front plane, this is the same plane. If I move to the other planes, see so this is how it works now.
I see. So that's how you create a recess to
that's the top, that's the front. So I should actually position it to the bottom and perhaps make it deeper, changing this size, or make it a little bit smaller. And the reason it's still in the center and not anywhere else is how I have chosen this setting here. I can choose this, how it works like. So you can actually make a parametric item, which you can later go there and change it one by one, or you can adjust it to a certain situation. And again, this is something that if you do that, if you do this change, you can just copy this property to all the rest of the items.
Can you show how to curve the beams, or so how you would create a beam? I mean a curved structure out of this.
Yeah, let's make a few of those there. Say there's, for example, a roof for a car or something like that. So in that case, what I would do, let's just create a beam, which is by default, I think I just created here. This is a beam at a position like this. It should be, I don't know, 3 meter long. And it should be inclined a bit, so I just change it to, I don't know, 10 degrees. Now it's minus 10. And then now the way I create this arc is I go to the settings, and there's the arc beam setting. I just enable it, and there's the bulge direction, which is upside. So this is how it will be curved. You can change the sides up, down, left or right. And the chord height, which is the height of this arc itself, it should be 0.2 in my case, and then this is what I have. And again, I just select it and use the edit array. Let's just make 9 more copies of this thing here, and let's just duplicate or multiplicate.
Perfect. Now let's talk about columns, because that's something that we haven't covered in detail yet. So when it comes to columns, what are the basic rules? Similarly to beams, how we position them, how we edit them? Okay,
talking about the columns, the first thing again that we should discover is how and where I can set up the properties. It's again on the building columns, right-click property, or building properties and column. And this is where I can find it's pretty similar to what we saw in case of the beam. We can change the cross section, We can select profiles from libraries, change the width and height, and even, again, just as in other cases, we can attach beam parameters. I can change the materials, and there is a difference here. I can change the base offset and the height, because it's usually starting from a specific location and goes to another location. And then I can even check this option, which is very useful. By default, the software enables this option, the insert into wall. What that means? This means if you create a beam like that, and you start a column like that, and you start the column tool, and you place it somewhere inside a wall, you will automatically see a correct connection between the beam and the wall. If it wouldn't be like that, if this option would be turned off like this, they would just simply overlap each other. So this is set to be auto-solve itself. So it actually automatically creates its own space inside the wall and works properly. So this is how you position it. And you can actually use another option, which if I just move it somewhere outside, I can demonstrate. This is how it looks like now. And there is another option. It's called the make only hole in the wall. I think we demonstrated it in another session. This is how you can use it for an extraction from the wall. And talking about specific properties of the beams and the columns, they also have the same settings as the beams. They also support cutout, recess, and attachment as a parametric addition to the item, and this is also something that you can copy from one item to another item.
In this regard, they work the same. What about making them slanted?
In this case, you need to change this option here, making, I don't know, let's just use 80. And in that case, now it inclines that way because when you design the direction of inclination 0 is that direction, but if you just, rotate it 90 degrees, then it will turn around. So this is how you...
Just for a reminder, can you show us in the properties where you actually bind them to the bottom and top of the structures?
Yeah, in case of
the
column, you can find it in the base and base offset and the height, and this is where you need to click on edit and set it to any sort of items. By default, when you start drawing anything in ARCHLine and you just use the ready-made items, they are automatically bound at the bottom to the top of the structure, so they will fall on top of the under construction. The slab which is under the
so under the tiling and everything.
Yeah, and their top is automatically set to the bottom of the structure, which is this level, which is the bottom of the ceiling.
Perfect. Now, one last thing to add, let's look at some listing and takeoff. So obviously, when it comes to creating data files out of an architectural project like this one, you have to know how to work with the numbers and data. So how do we get a targeted quantity takeoff or listing of beams and slabs and columns?
Yeah, there are several options here. One is you just click on this option and then you can select what sort of information you would like to collect. Now I'm about to collect the building calculation, and here I can enable or disable what sort of item I would like to see. I just disable everything and I keep the beam, the column, and for example the slabs, because this was the focus of today's webinar. And here you can add extra options. You can even export the beam parameters. Now I skip that, but if I added beam parameters like any sort of energy calculation results or anything like that, this is how you can extract that information as well. Now I'm not talking about IFC files, that's a totally different thing. This is when the software collects this information and writes it into an Excel file. So selecting these, I'm saying okay, let's just create something like a column, slab and beam list, and let's just create that. And first, always you see the summary of this document, and there is the slab. There's quite a few, not too much. There is also some information about the layers, areas and sides and materials used. Slab layers sorted in a way where you can easily figure out which is the largest and the smallest. There's the column list. Now we didn't use much here, but as you can see, there is a beam list again, and there's the IDs of what sort of items I used. And if I know the ID, I know that there there's a column with the number of 962. I can easily find it using the the view. No, it's in the edit. Sorry, it's select. Yeah, it's also at the bottom. Yeah, and here's the other one is the by properties, and
you just have to
ID,
check the ID, and
it's 962, I believe.
That's right. And now it
and
jumps
then the
there.
suffer jumps there, and you can easily find it. So if it's a large and complex detailed plan, then you will find it. And at the end, let me just quickly load a project which represents quite a few connections that you can do with the software in other scenarios. And this is like that. As you can see, it's an example to mostly wooden structures, but all with the cutouts, the recess, and even the columns are cut. And there's quite a few of these. And then you can create a terrace like this. You can create another roof like that. Actually, the roof by itself, it automatically supports this sort of shape. So you don't necessarily need to create beams one by one. But if you want to do that for any sort of reason, that's fine too.
There's an option for that. That's actually what we wanted to cover. There's quite a few things. So we managed to cover the basic and the more complex issues regarding slabs, columns, and beams. If you feel that there's anything missing, you can, as always, ask your questions or send us an email. And then next time we try to implement these questions into our show. Yeah. But what about next time? Next time we are going to talk about advanced furniture modeling tools. Now, this is something that we touched upon before. So we showed you how to create cabinetry and simple furniture pieces, but next time we are going to go a bit beyond that, creating curved kitchen elements and also equipment and furniture under staircases or under roof spaces.
Yeah, and we will show you quite a few special use of the panel, the so-called panel tool, the cabinet panel, how you can use it even for decoration.
That's right. So hope to see you all there. It's going to be next Wednesday at the same time at 3 p.m. Central European Time. Meanwhile, thank you for your attention and hope to see every one of you there when we talk about these amazing furniture tools. Thank you very much for your attention. See you next time.
See you. Goodbye.